Hi boys and girls, are you ready to go on an adventure? Let's take an adventure with Flat Stanley. Chapter 1, The Bulletin Board. Breakfast was ready. I'll go wake the boys, Mrs. Lambchop said to her husband, George Lambchop. Just then, their younger son, Arthur, called from the bedroom he shared with his brother, Stanley. Hey, come and look! Hey! Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop were both very much in favor of politeness and careful speech. Hay is for horses, Arthur, not people, Mr. Lambchop said as they entered the bedroom. Try to remember that. Excuse me, Arthur said, but look! He pointed to Stanley's bed. Across it lay an enormous bulletin board that Mr. Lambchop had given the boys a Christmas ago so that they could pin up pictures and messages and maps. It had fallen during the night on top of Stanley. But Stanley was not hurt. In fact, he would still have been sleeping if he had not been woken up by his brother's shout. What's going on here? He called out cheerfully from beneath the enormous bulletin board. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop hurried to lift it from the bed. Heavens, said Mrs. Lambchop. Gosh, said Arthur, Stanley's flat as a pancake, said Mr. Lambchop. Darndest thing I've ever seen. Let's all have breakfast, Mrs. Lambchop said. Then Stanley and I will go see Dr. Dan and hear what he has to say. In the office, Dr. Dan examined Stanley all over. How do you feel? He asked. Does it hurt very much? I felt sort of tingly for a while after I got up, Stanley Lambchop said, but I feel fine now. Well, that's mostly how it goes with these cases, said Dr. Dan. We'll just have to keep an eye on this young fellow. He said when he finished up the examination, sometimes we doctors, despite all of our years of training and expertise, can only marvel at how little we actually know. Mrs. Lambchop said she thought Stanley's clothes would need to be altered or changed by a tailor now, so Dr. Dan told his nurse to take Stanley's measurements. Mrs. Lambchop wrote them down. Stanley was 4 feet tall, about 1 foot wide, and 1/2 an inch